Hello to a new episode of Leadership Talks with Advertising Vietnam. My name is Lars Födisch from Precious Communications. We want to really look into topics and deep dive into what defines the marketing world today, tomorrow, and in the future to come. Today we have a very special guest talking with us about digital disruption and the impact on traditional marketing practices. And the guest today has a career of over 30 years, starting as an artist, if I'm not mistaken, studying art, has been through a lot of FMCG, but I let him introduce himself. It's no other than...
Hello everyone, my name is Hiệp. And for the last more than 25 years that I have been working in marketing, in advertising, and in communications. I have the privilege and lucky enough to contribute in building brands at the agency Saatchi in Saatchi, Vietnam, or the breweries at Carlsberg and Sabeco, or the FMCG brands at Nestle, just to name a few. So as you see, as Lars already introduced, that I used to be an interior designer. And I used to work like a carpenter, and now I still think like one. And I think it is the same process of thinking between a designer and a marketer.
Harrison Ford, the well-known actor and Hollywood star, he also was a carpenter. So yeah. I'm waiting for you to be nominated for an Oscar as well at some point.
You are too generous. Yeah.
But let's dive in a little bit. If we look beyond just basic awareness, how can brands leverage digital marketing to really drive down a little bit more into engagement and loyalty? Everybody wants it, hardly anybody gets it right.
Yeah. I think the answer to that is quite simple. That the brand have to be consumer-centric. So that it is the mindset to try to engage the consumer in real time. Exactly at where they are and at the moment that they are most open to the brand.
How do you make sure you get it right? Because if we approach them at the wrong time, wrong place, when they're not ready, then it's very intrusive. So what's the magical sprinkles you applied in your time in Nestle and others to really get it right? Because otherwise it could maybe cause more damage than positive outcomes.
I understand that. That it is why there's a thing that they call it personalization. And then the personalization and the whole thing, it is based on the omni-channel. The omni-channel model is very much that it is based on the data signal that you have about your consumer, and those data signal that it is for example what the person is doing at that time. How is he or she feeling? What clothes is he or she with the brand? And then and so on and so forth. There's nothing intrusive in here. But then, based on that, you can use technology to automate the content, so that it is so that it is happening. Everything in a very natural way, at the right place, at the right time, and when they are most open to the brand.
So when we're using digital devices, we leave the footprint that helps brands to get all these trigger points. Does it also mean traditional out-of-home bus stops or billboards are dead because it's that one for many at any time?
I think like the omni-channel. That it is, identified, like different kinds of touch point, and it always goes, from offline to online, and so and then back. So, that it is based on, quite a lot of different kinds of analytics that we have on. So the more data signals that we have, the richer the analytics can be, and then based on that, we can form, like the best way, the most effective and efficient way to reach them at the right time.
Can you maybe give an example from your time in the different brands when really this cohesive customer experience got it right across online and offline?
Okay, let's look at that. For example, it's the afternoon time, and it is raining, and you are at home, for example. And then when you are at home and then it is afternoon and it's raining, like you tend to relax a little bit. Like you tend to, like, okay, give it a little bit of the break. And then when you have a break, like maybe you want to listen to the music. And then because it is raining, you're looking outside and think that maybe, okay, it's a very good moment to be connected with the nature. Then you are just, like going through your iPad or your device, and then naturally you find, like a music album that it is really inspired by the sound of nature. And that music album is produced by Nescafe with a beautiful voice from a singer that you like. And then, it just trigger you to the right moment that, okay, a warm scented 3-in-1 a milk coffee of Nescafe can be the great thing to treat yourself.
I get the point. So you would, for example, have arrangements with the Spotifys of this world to know when people listen to what songs and have the full kind of view on that.
Behind that, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of researches, there's a lot of analytics, there's a lot of tests and pilot, there's a lot of, like different hard work that it is putting in there. And then, like this whole thing, you just cannot do it by yourself without the help of technologies and AI and so on and so forth to make it, like a very big scale.
Talking about technology, right? We already have so many data points. You mentioned AI. What do you think are we seeing in the future of marketing? Have we already? Is it basically marketers are technicians more than magicians these days?
I think we don't do technology just for the sake of applied technologies. I think like the technologies is only helping us to do that, to make that the example of Nescafe, like I've just mentioned, like in a very, very big scale. Then for doing that, like people cannot do. You see, only the machine can do it at a big scale. Maybe you remember the good old days of advertising.
Of course.
All we had to do was, like to produce a beautiful thematic TVC. It is a film. They call it the main thrust film, and then produce a nice key visual, and then adapt it into like 20 different items, and then put up onto the mass media, and then the job is done. But nowadays, like the consumers, they are much more connected, and then they have the power to select the content right at their fingers.
Yeah.
So that becomes, like a totally different gameplay for the marketers. Now that marketers have to make sure that the campaign have a few thousands or tens of thousands, content items.
How can you do it on budget, on time? Because we know traditional TVCs already takes months from planning to execution and big budgets. That's one TVC. Yeah. Now you're talking about 10,000 assets.
Yeah, 10,000 assets. That means you have to, like divide the content into different pieces, and then you match it with, like different kinds of scenarios, of data signals, of consumers, everything. Then, like that it is where machine learning and AI come into play.
But does it also mean that only the big guys like the Nestle's or the Carlsbergs of the world actually have the expertise, the budget, the access, and the data points that they can be successful, so there will be a bigger divide? Or does it actually become a more level playing field because technology takes away a lot of hurdles and helps to automate things?
I think it's true for both. It depends on which scale that you want to activate, you know. Because if it is FMCG, of course you want to do, you know, like you are obsessed by scale. Then, you know, like you want to do really big scale. But then when you are a small and sharp, you know, like enterprise, you can, you know, like narrow down your target audience, you know, like in a much smaller scale. Then still, you know, like you can still use the technology to tailor to your case.
How does it affect also budgets? Because I read somewhere that in the future the CMO will have a bigger technology budget than the CIO, because it's not just leave the infrastructure kind of play away, but really looking into data collection, production tools. So is the new CMO type actually the secret CIO of a company?
And that's a very nice way to put it. But at the like I mentioned, the technology is only self. You know, like the objective of the company. The company is there to set up, you know, like to sell more at higher price, and then it is, you know, like and then that purpose is too important to be left with the marketing department only. Okay. So all the technologies had to serve that kind of purpose.
We touched on it already a little bit, but we see consumers being more digital first than ever before. How does it change the game for marketers in a nutshell?
I think the digital first, the consumers, that's very much the new habit. But the core fundamental thing never changed. I think, you know, like the consumers are still human, right? Not becoming robot just yet. So first and foremost, I think the brand have to make sure that they have that they adopt a consumer centricity mindset. That it is very much, you know, like means that the consumer should always be in the center. Yeah, the purpose of the company is just to make, you know, like their life better, and the companies have always to, you know, like care for what they can do to the consumer at the personal level. The brand of the company, you know, like the consumer need to see, oh, is this a brand I can trust? Oh, it is a brand that it is worth the money that I spend. Oh, is it a brand with a very good product? Or oh, is it a brand that it is aware that happened with many new and interesting things? Or it is a brand that care for my family, for the community, for the environment, and then that it is care for, you know, like the regeneration and so on and so forth. This mindset, all the time, it's never changed, you know, like from, you know, like many years ago. It had, because it has no end point. There are always, you know, like new picture ahead. And especially when it is when the people being more connected, yeah, and it's escalating to new levels.
So at the same time, we're seeing a situation where there are more brand touch points that consumers face every day. It went up from 3,000 a few decades ago to 10,000 brand touch points. So it's very noisy out there. So how do you really build a stronger relationship with a customer if there's so much more competition for attention?
Yeah, that is a very interesting. That is a very interesting question indeed. I think the end of the day, it is the unreasonable power of creativity. Yeah, it's something never changed. It's something never changed. It's something that AI can never replace. I think creativity drive more business results than any other element of the whole marketing mix. I think that it is even more important than the media. You know why?
Tell me.
I think, imagine, with all the science, with all the studies, with all the data activation and everything, and programmatics and so on and so forth, and then you can reach to the consumer, okay, at real time, yes, right place, yes, right time, yes. But then what happens if your engagement to that consumer does not make sense at the time? Then it is a waste of money and opportunity, right?
Creativity often means taking a risk.
Yeah.
So with the maybe overemphasis on technology, do you think brands become, I wouldn't say lazy, but playing more safe? So they're more focusing on the optimization than the big idea. And then you end up with an okay creative campaign, you just optimize it out of it. But do you really create brand love with this kind of thing?
Of course. I think, so in here, marketers and I mean the marketing company and the agencies have to make sure that, that they always start with the consumer centricity. And then, having very good insight of the people, and then based on that, that it is building the brand idea, building the whole, the whole solution of engagement with the consumers in a very emotional way. Therefore, it is still, the purpose of the company is still to build the brand of that having the brand that it is loved by the consumers is the end result. It is the most wonderful thing that in the consumer experience. So it is still, at the end of the day, it is still the big idea. It is still the creativity. It is still that it is the only thing that it is making brand that can, being ahead in the omnichannel world.
Let's look at creativity nowadays. I have the suspicion that with cancel culture and everybody is so sensitive, that the big provoking creative campaigns that we saw 10, 20 years ago are actually gone, and people focus more on being safe. Is that something you see as well, and does it actually help save the brand or actually slowly destroys the brand because it doesn't engage emotionally anymore?
I think it's true. I think it's true. Nowadays, people consume much more content. Different type, different contents than So sometimes sometimes the whole idea of being very different, really standing out with big ideas, maybe it's not relevant anymore. In the fast-moving consumption of content right now. But at the end of the day, you still have to strike a very nice balance between, being in the trend of everything that people consume right now, that it's more content than creative.
Okay.
But at the same time, you also have to make sure that you have, that you're making the emotional relationship, that it is can only be driven by creativity, by, really insightful ideas. And there's still a lot of bold ideas these days. But then, of course, compared to the past, it's less and less.
Let's look at the fact that some brands are really trying to reach out a mass audience in terms of Gen Zs to pioneers. How do you deal with that what might work for our parents' generation might not get Gen Zs excited? So does it lead to a situation where brands just go mellow and not to upset anybody? Or is it the reality that what you and I see of a brand because of specific targeting is completely different what a Gen Z audience would see?
I think it's a very interesting challenge for the creative. You know, I think sometimes you just assume that the older generation, you know, like they don't resonate with the stuff with the young people. Maybe not. Maybe that it is not true. So in here, you know, like the name of the game is to find out, you know, like the right insight. That it is can unlock can unlock the issues of the brand, and then make it connected better with the, you know, like with across the like a different target. I think at the end of the day, you know, like that it is why, you know, working on creativity is a thing that it is not easy and it is challenging, but it is the worth that worth working on.
Talking about creativity, you've worked for global brands, but focused on Vietnam. Is there a special sauce how creative campaigns have to be adjusted that it works in Vietnam, or have you seen things that work better or not in terms of themes, language, emotion?
Again, you know, that it is about, you know, like insight. It's about insight. There are a lot of things that may, you know, like resonate with the consumers in the world, but not resonate so well, you know, with the Vietnamese people, and vice versa, you know. So, I mean, but then at the end of the day, it is still, you know, like the local, the people resonate more with the local context, you know. And then when it talk to when it pull the emotional core of the human, it's always, you know, like more effective for the creative.
You also been a judge for the Mobile Marketing Association for a long time. Do you see a change or trend on how creatives or creative ideas are changing? Is it more people focused? Is it more technology focused? Is it more shock, less shock advertising? Any certain trends or themes that you've seen over the years?
You know, over the years, you know, the categories of the MMA Smarties becoming bigger and bigger. There are more categories, different kind of engagement. And it is a huge variety of different, you know, like content that it is developed. And then it becomes, you know, like right now, you know, like the whole creative business becomes very different to just a few years ago. To be very honest with you, you know, like we don't have like gold prize for creative category anymore, for example. But then, you know, like many of the great work that it is, you know, like in more varied platforms, varied technologies, varied, you know, like engagement to the consumers.
So then maybe an advice for young people that want to enter the industry. What do you think, other than being more tech savvy, any specific skills or mindsets that you would encourage them to bring to the table when they want to enter the marketing field?
I think again that it is curiosity. I think you have to be really curious about, you know, like how people behave, how people feel, and then based on that you are able to identify insight that work for you. And of course, you know, like in a bigger picture, that it is the consumer centricity that I have just mentioned. So at the end of the day, if you really care about, you know, like if you really care, you're really curious about, you know, like why people behave like this or why people behave like that, why people talk like this and not behave like this, doing something else or things like that. That it is at the end of the day, if you work very hard on the inside and then based on that, you know, like that you can use the technology as an enabler, so that you can have better engagement with the consumers. at the end of the day, the most important thing is the creativity, and thank God we still, have that, not having the rich to be replaced by AI.
Realistically speaking, you came as a art studies major. You started as an interior designer into the field. Do you think that's still possible, or now it would be more coders and programmers that are the next generation of CMOs?
No, I think that it is still possible. It is still possible because that it is a way of thinking.
Okay.
So it is a process of thinking rather than it is a tool. For example, like a saw, and then after that you have a better saw machine. And then you can use the saw machine to work faster and more productive. To cutting down trees or cutting down your own fingers. It is not it is not a mistake of the. It's not because of the saw. It is because of you. So it is how you. It's about how you use it.
Then you opened it for one last tough question. So with all these technologies at our disposal. For marketers, isn't there also a danger that some marketers might use it too far, that they collect too much information and try to approach the audience not just at the right time, what's right for the brand, but also at a critical, maybe vulnerable time for the consumer, where it should be better to leave them alone because they're not in the best state to make good decisions? So are they getting too intrusive? So you said it's just a tool. It's what you do with that. So does the industry need a stronger ethical code?
I think so. I do agree with you. That it is also something never changed. Something never changed even before. And even this day, you can look at that there are quite a lot of different kinds of provisions and restrictions, quite a lot of things of ethical solutions to make sure that you have the brand safety, to make sure that you have the data compliance, to make sure that you have you're not intrusive to the people's life. But at the end of the day, the whole thing is that how you can find a creative solution to overcome all the challenge. And then at the end of the day, like I said, catching, engage with the consumer at the right time, at the right place, and when they are most receptive with the brand.
So, in a nutshell,
that's where
to end today's episode, are you more excited or worried about the marketing industry?
I think both. I think both. More worried, yes, and at the same time, more excited because, from worry, we identified more challenges, and then more challenges just excite us. Yeah.
Excellent. Looking forward to more exciting things that also come from your creativity in the future. Thank you so much for being a guest. And that concludes today's episode of Leadership Talks. Thank you very much for your insights, and hopefully see you again soon in the future.
Okay. So thank you so much for the opportunity for sharing in here. And sure, we'll see each other in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.